Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Coyote is not in the Highlands. As you can tell from the background, I am in a hotel room. Interesting, we just had to run some errands, so with the windstorm and the drive time, because this is like a 2.5 hour each way thing, we just spent the night, right? So that's all. I want to bring up some stuff about specifically China, but as a general thing. Because this seems to be encroaching. Let's back up a little bit. I want to talk about genocide and removal of populations and removal of dissident populations, and how it's not always necessarily a genetic genocide. And how this is migrating, a new form of genocide is migrating to the West. Although, arguably, the West invented it. But China has taken everything, like it usually does, to a new and dangerously weird level. So, you can think of it as a slow genocide, or a political genocide, or a not as violent genocide. So, for example, you can take a look at some of the countries like with the Khmer Rouge and stuff, where 800,000 or 1 million people die in like a year. Boom. I think one of the African genocides, it was 800,000 people in 100 days. Whoa! That's genocide, right? That's like a big deal. You know, and then, I mean, what most people think of as the classic is the Nazis, and that was with the Holocaust, and that's actually it. I mean, it was long and it was extensive and it was industrialized, but it's not the worst genocide in history by far. And you can think of the British as having invented the slow form of genocide, or you can think of the Russians as having invented it with the communists, but whatever. We're going to talk about the current iterations a little bit. I just want you to think about this and be aware and just kind of have it on your radar, because this is one of the things that I really want to push on the current progressive political movements in the West and the globalist movements in the West. I want to push on them really hard, because what you've got going on now, aside from the fact that no one in government, no one in power, no one in serious levels of industry or media will talk about the Uyghurs, for example, or any of the other. I think China has 4 genocides going on right now, and I can't pronounce all of the populations involved, but people in power won't talk about this, especially the media, because the media speaks truth to power. No, that's outdated. The media manufactures truth for power. There we go. That's what it is. These genocides are going on, but they're not going on in the same way. It would be really hard to ignore it if the Chinese were just machine gunning Uyghurs down, like mass graves and full on, death style. No, what they do is they put them in camps. They remove their agency, they remove their identities, they remove their political freedoms, they remove their human freedoms, and then they basically stop their population growth, population replenishment. They stop them from having babies in a lot of cases. It's not exclusive, these things, you don't do these things all at once. And they remove the culture, but it still ends up as a genocide. They get rid of an unwanted population. Okay? Clean and easy, without a whole bunch of blood spraying the walls. And that looks very attractive to certain powers in the West, notably the progressive and globalist West. They are really into this. They really like the view that they're getting of China. Okay, they like the digital controls, okay, the digital currencies, the control of the population through tracking, social credit, the idea of chips implanted that show your medical history, like all this stuff. They're really excited about this, okay? People in power really like this. They don't see a problem with it because it doesn't affect them because they're elites in power and they obviously should have total control over the rest of us, right? No. But this slow modern genocide seems like a really neat answer to them. You can see the progress of this. You can see how this works. On a surface level, they foment hatred. They make it so that if you look at it right now, in America, they're trying to functionally outlaw one of the political parties. And people think about this as the duopoly and everything, but when you really get down to it, the messaging that they're making is that Republicans, that's the ones they're trying to demonize at the moment, are inherently evil, bad, insurrectionist, treasonous, anti-government, and should be outlawed and removed. They're trying to manufacture a dissident population that way. But in part of what goes along with that is that they're trying to remove your ability. This is obvious. This is there. This is blatantly stated. They don't want you to be able to raise your children in alternate viewpoints. You have to have that mass viewpoint. And I find this very interesting, especially for the liberals in the United States who aren't necessarily progressive or globalist. They've gone along with this. They've gotten rid of the whole hippie, independent, do your thing, you do you, boo, woo, freedom for everybody thing. Totally gone. There's a way to think, and you get rid of the populations that don't think that way. You get rid of them by either changing them, okay? But this is, again, the West has done this before. We've done this by taking natives out of their tribal families and putting them in white schools, just for an example. So that's one example. But they're trying to change that. They're trying to do that, and then they want to remove certain populations. They don't want white males to exist. Apparently, I don't know how that one works. And I don't want to go too far off the deep end because this isn't about race necessarily. But you have different populations. You have dissident populations in various European countries that are ethnic or cultural. The two things get blurred a lot because it's not just about genetics. And the idea is to remove them. You put you imprison all of them that are actually active dissidents, and you kind of remove their ability to have their culture. You remove their political rights, you remove their cultural rights, you remove their cultural stamp, and you eradicate them. Genocide. There is still death, blood, all of that involved, but it's at a very low level and a very slow level. It's a multi-generational tactic, and it seems to be working very well because no one wants to recognize it or fight it. And I feel like in this video I'm getting just a little bit off the deep end for most people. I apologize if I'm going from like Walter Cronkite to Alex Jones here. But this is working, this is happening, and it's escalating, and it's becoming a really big deal. To get rid of the populations you don't like, you imprison them, remove their identities, not necessarily at the same time. You imprison some of them, you remove the identities of some of them, take their kids away, or at least take their child rearing away, and you reduce their breeding, their ability to replace themselves insofar as their culture or genotype has that function, okay? It's a little less obvious in the United States because we have a very open society, but the globalists and the progressives are trying to close that down. They're trying to restrict you to your lane, the one you're born in. And that's some really scary stuff. I wanted to make a note of it because I think it's something that people aren't really putting on their radar. But what they're doing with the Uyghurs is pretty much exactly what they're doing with dissident populations in the West. If you don't buy into the progressive globalist left establishment in the US or Trudeauism in Canada or whatever, pick a country in Europe, then you're bad and they're going to get rid of you. So stick that in your hat and stay sideways.